Good evening. On behalf of Four Corners Community Chapel, I'm pleased to welcome you to the fifth and final in this online forum called Who is My Neighbor? My name is Reverend David Pierce. Before I introduce you to our neighbor guest for the evening, allow me to take a moment and tell you how we got here. But before I do that, a couple quick housekeeping items. You'll notice that your volume has been shut off tonight. That is not because we do not want to hear from you. It is to ensure that we are able to hear our speaker and our moderator. We would actually love to hear from you. And if at any point in the next 75 minutes, you have a question that you would like to ask of our speaker tonight, you can enter it into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Your question will come directly to me as the host, and I will do my best to get all our questions into the mix. Should we encounter any technical difficulties in our connection, we will do our best to resolve them as quickly as possible. Tonight, as we close out this forum, I would like to end by taking you back to where we began. Last summer, in small groups across our congregation here in Rhode Island, we found ourselves looking out over the landscape of our country. And in particular, we were looking at the racial injustice being committed against our Black neighbors. Sadly, this injustice was not new to the Black community. It has been known for over 400 years. What did feel new, however, at least within those small circles, was a certain resolve on our part to look inward, to ask ourselves what our responsibility is as a predominantly white, privileged, faith community to right the wrongs of injustice. Out of that, we began to think of ways that we could become better learners, better listeners, better neighbors. And so we created Who's My Neighbor? It has been sponsored this whole time by our missions ministry, many of whom are on the call tonight, and we give them our thanks for this opportunity. Who is my neighbor is the question that Jesus got asked once by a lawyer who was trying to justify his own actions and attitudes in the world. The answer that Jesus gave him to his question was, the one who shows mercy. The neighbor is the one who shows mercy. Over the last 3 months, in our own efforts to become more merciful neighbors, we've met neighbors from the Jewish Orthodox community, the Latina community, and refugee neighbors from Syria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And tonight we get to meet Caleb Johnson. Caleb, who is a good friend of Rosina Guys's, grew up here in Rhode Island and swears that the thing he misses most after living 2 years down in Florida, believe it or not, is the weather. Caleb also has lived in North Carolina. Having worked in a group home and as a school counselor at one time, these days, he focuses tirelessly on advocating for and serving the needs of the homeless community. The first time that I got to speak with Caleb was over the phone about this forum, and he graciously stayed on with me for almost 2 hours, listening to my questions, the good ones, and maybe the not so good ones. The thing that I have come to discover about Caleb is that he does not ride on a resume or on a reputation. He is intelligent, thoughtful, humble, and kind. And as a member of the Black community, he has told me over and over again, no question is a bad question. For our questions is where we must begin. So tonight, I will not say anything more about Caleb, for he speaks for himself and he does it so well. And we are grateful tonight that he has also come to speak with us. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our moderator, Steve Hill, and to our good neighbor, Caleb Johnson.
Thank you, David, and Caleb, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. I want to start off with the question that we started with everybody, and really it's the aim of this forum is to foster the dialogue at what it's like to be a good neighbor. And where you hear the phrase good neighbor, what comes to mind for you?
For me, when I think of the term good neighbor, it's someone that you're sharing space with, in the community, someone that you can be friendly with, talk to, someone who can respect boundaries, but someone who can look out for you and that you can look out for as well. I definitely grew up with it takes a community, to raise a child. When I was a child, the next door neighbor, if they saw you doing wrong, they would pop you, send you back to your parents, tell your parents, what you did, and then you got it from your parents. But it helped raise you. But when I think neighbor, I think someone that you can definitely count on.
So, in the last, really the last year, and really, as David said, the last 400, but really in the last year, we've heard a lot about the struggles that have hit the Black community. And I'd like to, just tell us about the people experiences and shaped your identity as a human, particularly as a Black man in the United States. And, what's good and what's bad.
Hmm. I mean, that's a really good question. As far as my experiences, my whole life is not a woe is me. You know, have I experienced injustices? Absolutely. I can remember as a child, it was like in the fifth grade, and I used to love police. When I was young, I wanted to be a cop. And I remember being in North Carolina, and I was walking home from school, and I saw cops. They were standing like around this tree. It's like they were looking for something. And I was real friendly, always spoke to police when I see them because I looked up to them. And I remember saying to the cop, hey, officer, what are you guys looking for? And he turns to me and he says, your dinner. Now get out of here. They didn't quite know how to take that, you know? I can remember being in North Carolina a couple years later. Um, and you remember the Book It program. You read so many books, you get a free pizza. They had a program like that in North Carolina. And I can remember getting a certificate, going into a pizza shop. I was the only one in the shop. I think I was probably about 13 at the time. And I walked up to the counter, gave the lady the certificate, and I said to her, using my manners, I was like, good evening. I'd like to order, whatever pizza it was. And I gave her the certificate, and she looked at me, and then she walked in the back. And again, there was no one in there but me at the time. So I don't think she knew I could hear her. And she says to the guy in the back, she goes, some nigger out front wants a pizza. And I left because I don't know what kind of pizza they serve the niggas, but I didn't want that pizza. I wanted the pizza that her kids would eat. So, I mean, I had experiences, and there's many more. I've been racially profiled in Woonsocket, but I've also had such great experiences. I don't believe everyone is bad, but it has shaped me in a way that it's really tough when you grow up knowing that the country expects so much from you, but does not like you. But even more so of not liking you, they deny that they don't like you and they make you seem like you're crazy. They make you seem like you're complaining. And that's tough. My mother used to always tell me when I was younger, when I called, like if I was going for a job, you have to sound white when you're on the phone. Sound white so that you get in the door, because if they hear your voice, if they hear the way you talk, and if you sound Black, then they're not gonna hire you. So we're always told that we have to work twice as hard just to try to meet on the same level. So those are experiences that I had. But one of the biggest influences in my life is a white woman. It was my sixth grade math teacher. Dr. Woods. Um, I think that woman had a big part in saving my life, actually, because she made me feel like I was smart. She made me feel like I was important. And she took the time to actually listen to me and help me out. And I've never forgotten Dr. Woods. You know, Brian Doherty, that I work for at B&M, he's another person. Um, he taught me how to be a man, um, financially responsible, work ethic. You know, he taught me to stay out of trouble, keep my nose clean, and I'll always be grateful to him for that. You know, so um, places, Rhode Island definitely raised me. New York, I never want to go back to New York, but you know, it definitely had a part in raising me. I've seen a lot of crazy things there, things that I knew I did not want to be a part of. You know, things that if I would have stayed in New York, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. You know, so
Well, that's a great question. It leads me to my next question. How was your experience different geographically? And that, as you move through the country, different parts of the country are, and we have different misconceptions of different parts of the country and how people are. And I'd love to just hear, what your experience has been as you've sort of migrated south. I think it's.
um, there's definitely a difference, and I deal with that every day being here in Florida. It's made me love and appreciate New England so much more, with all the diversity, with all of the struggles that I may have went through back there. It's nothing compared to what I see here. Even in this day and age, it's just there's such a difference. I think that people up north are way more accepting, way more tolerant. You know, we all have our prejudice. That's never going to go away. And, you know, I mean, on a certain level, it's okay, you know. But down here, it's just so blatant. Um, the racism is blatant. I mean, I moved down here in 2018, I think it was. And the first job I had, I was working at a Perkins. And one of the prep cooks that worked in there, and this is an older gentleman, he had to be like in his 60s. And just out of nowhere, he walked up to me and he said, "What would you do if I called you a nigger?" Now, this was just a couple years ago. You couldn't say that back home. I worked at Cintas, no matter what restaurant I worked in, you could not say that back in Rhode Island. You would fear you'd lose your job. You know, you'd fear you'd be sitting in HR. It would be a real problem. But down here, it's just, there was no fear. It was just a question. And I was really blown away by it. I shouldn't have been, but I was blown away by the nerve that he just felt so comfortable to say something like that to me. So I feel like the mentality down here is just so, it's just so different, you know. People, they're very blatant and it's very uncomfortable. Not everyone is like that, but they definitely have a different view than up north.
So what did you say when he said that? I mean,
You want my honest answer?
I'd love to hear your honest answer. We do
My,
have kids present, so
okay. Right. Well, my honest answer was, I'm going to let you know something right now. I am not from here. If you want to know what's going to happen, say it and watch you leave here on a stretcher. And what I told him was, I am a lot more Malcolm than I am Martin. And when he looked at me, he just threw his hands up and he walked away.
excellent. My next question is, what's been the influence of religion on your identity, and what's the influence of religion on the Black community in America?
For me, it was very, very difficult growing up. I was very, very confused because my grandparents on my mother's side, the whole family, they're all Christian. My father's side, my my grandmother, devout Christian, but my father, my uncles, they're all Israelite. And I was brought up, it was like a fight between families because my grandparents didn't want us to be Israelites. But my father was like, there's no way you're going to preach Christianity to my son. So it was very confusing for me because I think we all have that feeling. Everybody needs that something. Everybody wants something to believe in, but regardless of what you believe in, you want to be faithful, you know? And it's very difficult when you're being pulled in two different directions. You don't know which way to go. You don't know what's right. So religion played a big part on me because there's so many rules on both sides. One side says it's okay to do this, but then the other side says you can't do that. So it was very confusing for me. And I did have to follow my own path and choose what I felt was right for me. As far as religion on the Black community, it's hard for me to speak on the community as a whole because there are so many religions. I feel, and please, I hope no one takes offense to this because I respect everyone's right to believe. And I would never try to change how anyone feels. But from everything that I've learned, everything that I see in the world, I feel like Christianity has such a grip on Black people. And within that community, I feel like it's used as a tool to keep us in control. And I feel like it's always been that way. And that's why, me personally, I could never be a Christian. For me, it's just not for me. Now, again, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone because I'm not knocking your religion or your right to believe what you want. But I feel like from the time, first of all, in history, any nation that captures another nation, what they do is they remove their religion and then they replace it with what the captors believe. So for me, knowing the history and how Christianity was forced on Africans as they were brought over here, it's always been hard for me to accept it as a religion because how could you do so much evil, so much bad, and do it under the blanket of Christianity? How can you do that, but then tell me to believe the same thing you believe? Because if I believe the same thing that these people believe who are raping, pillaging, killing children, if I'm praying to this God and you're praying to this God, but you're beating me every day, whose prayers are getting answered? So that's the confusion for me personally. And I feel like we have been indoctrined to just accept this for what it is. And anytime you speak outside of that, you face public shame. You face, oh, you're going to go to hell. And I think that it has such a grip because it teaches us no matter how much you slap us in the face, just turn the other cheek. And I think it's used to keep the Black community in control.
Who are the people that make up the community that you work with and are part of, in Orlando?
I mean, the community that I live in it's pretty diverse. It's different. It's all levels of economics. It's all levels of race. the community is pretty diverse. It's kind of hard to say for one what makes up this community. It's very diverse. That's the best way I can really answer that question. I hope that's good enough.
All answers are good. I mean, there's no wrong answer. That's the best part of our conversation. We're not keeping score. What's your experience? In your experience, what are the misconceptions that Black people have about white people and vice versa?
That, well, it's for a lot of misconceptions Black people have about white people is they're rich. They're all rich. They all have good credit. Um, if you want to have success, get with a white person. That all white people are racist. That, yeah, I mean, along those lines. And as far as I can say, misconceptions that white people have of Black people is that we're lazy. We father a lot of children that we don't take care of. That Blacks kill each other. That right there, let me just stop and say this, there's no such thing as Black on Black crime. And I think that the media beats that into people's head, but there's no such thing as Black on Black crime. And I think that that is a very huge misconception that whites have, because when you see things like Black Lives Matter, a lot of people will say, well, how come Black lives only matter when it's a white person killing a Black person, but when you're killing each other, it doesn't matter. And that in itself, people don't understand the toxicity within that statement, because criminals kill. Black people don't kill. When something happens, when a Black person commits a crime, we all get looked at as if we did it. Just like if a Black person kills another Black person, you say, why are you Blacks always killing each other? But how many white men kill their families? But nobody says, why are all you white men killing your families? You treat each case individually. It's just that person. But when it's a Black person, we get judged as a whole. Crime is committed within proximity. So if you marginalize a group of people and you force them within these small communities of self, and the communities are poverty stricken, you're going to have more crime. But the crime that's committed is going to be against people in that community. So Black people do not, quote unquote, kill Black people. A murderer murders. A criminal commits crime. And if the majority of that community is Black, then the majority of the crime is going to be committed against a Black person. It's no different than, when you got white serial killers and they kill within their community. Most of their victims look like them, because they kill within proximity. So I think that that is a big misconception that the media beats into people, because when you hear about it on TV, you hear Black on Black crime. You always hear that term. You don't hear white on white crime. If a white person commits a crime, you just hear a crime was committed. You don't hear a Black on Black crime. I mean, a white on white crime. But there's these talking points that they drive it home to you, and it's just a tool to make you afraid of me.
So how do we change this misconception?
I think that the way you change it is to not believe everything you hear. I think that you can't just get your information from television. Speak to people who are different from you. Actually have a conversation with the people outside of your community. Talk to them, you know, but don't just discount what they have to say, because a lot of times people will write it off like, oh, that's nonsense, or oh, that's not true, because they don't want to believe that certain things are true, you know? So I think that the same way, look, when I was growing up, my uncle told me, you know, don't bring a white girl home. Don't bring no white girl home, because the first time something go wrong, they're gonna blame you. And like, oh, I was told white people are devils. You know, I grew up for a little while with the fear of white people. I didn't want to be associated because I didn't trust them because of what I was being told. But when I stepped outside of that, and definitely working at B&M, working at East Ave Cafe, that really, really opened my eyes to a lot, because I mean, there was nobody but white people that I was surrounded by working there, And when you're having conversations, you hear things, you hear what they think, but then you're able to change certain people's minds, and people are able to change my mind. I mean, I've known Rosina for well over 20 years, and Rosina and I have had conversations nonstop. Every time we worked together, we would have conversations, and it helps because it bridges that gap. And I think that's why when this whole forum and everything came up, Rosina reached out to me, you know, um, because we have always had these conversations, but it helps to break that barrier so that we're not afraid of each other, you know?
It's great. One of the main things you mentioned was, your uncle. It's what do you think the challenges are for Black parents trying to, raise children in today's society?
Oh, I think there's a ton of challenges. First of all, I think that we have to, I mean, I've raised my children, I have a son that's graduating college in May. And from the time he was little, there's things that I have to tell my young Black son that you wouldn't even think of telling your young white son, you know? Um, I have to prep him when he walks out the door. The challenges raising Black kids is we're constantly having to teach our kids how to make you feel comfortable. Let that sink in for a minute. Everything I tell my son, everything we have to tell our children is so that you feel comfortable. When you walk around people, don't reach so quick into your pocket. Don't keep your hands in your pocket. If you get pulled over by a cop, look straight ahead. Put your hands on the steering wheel. Don't reach for anything. These are things I have to tell my son before he goes out anywhere. You can't look like this going over here because they're going to think this of you. It's a huge challenge because we don't know if our child is going to come home. And it gives the parents anxiety. It gives us PTSD because we have to spend our lives making white people feel comfortable with us just being Black and in the neighborhood. My parents could have way more money than you, but that doesn't matter. If I'm walking outside, if I'm walking down the street, I could have the biggest house on the block. But if I'm not in my yard, and half the time you can be in your yard and people will want you to prove that you live there. How many times have you had a cop stop you and make you prove that you live in that neighborhood? Because I've had it happen to me when I lived in Cranston. And I was bringing my son to school. He forgot, no, I'm sorry. He was at school. He left his lunch. I drove to the school to drop off his lunch. As I was leaving the school, there was a cop who was sitting off on the side, and I'm driving by and he sees me and he starts following me. Now I already know, and again, I'm in this neighborhood, so I know I have to stop at every stop sign, and I need to stop for 3 seconds longer than anybody else would, just so that they can't say I didn't stop. I stop, I take a left, the cop's following me. I get out to the main road, he pulls me over. Cop says to me, "Do you know the reason why I stopped you?" I said, "I'm sure you're going to tell me that I ran a stop sign or something, but I know I didn't. I'm a professional driver. I worked for Frito-Lay at the time." I was like, "I know I didn't run a stop sign. I saw you sitting back there." And he said, "Well, I pulled you over because you did run a stop sign." I said, "Officer, I know I didn't run a stop sign, but you're going to stop me anyway. So, here's my paperwork." And then he said, "Well, what are you doing over here?" I said, "My son left his lunch, so I was bringing his lunch to school." And he looked at me and he said, "Your son goes to school over here?" As if he can only go to some poor school in Providence. I said, "Well, I worked very hard for my son to go to school over here." But these are the things that, we have to deal with. We spend a lifetime making others feel comfortable.
Wow. So what degree is what's your son graduating in?
Right, he switched his major like a million times, and I believe he settled on anthropology.
Oh,
So
excellent.
yeah, so he's got some work lined up for him. Great kid. He plays the saxophone. He's been playing for years. He ran track. He went to Cranston East. Then he went to Mount Pleasant, and he just loves it. He goes back to the school. He teaches band,
Excellent.
and yeah, he does a lot. He does good.
That's great. Um, how you know how would you measure the importance and impact of the Black Lives Matter movement? And it's really, it's been going on now for a number of years, but I really think in the last 12 months, we've seen it, really become a front and center issue. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, well, I think the Black Lives Matter movement is another very important movement within the Black community. And I think that it definitely gets a bad rap, but it's nothing new. Every time the Black community does something to better ourselves, to help us, it gets knocked down, it gets viewed as criminal. It's not what the media says it is. It's really not. No matter what organization you have, you're always going to have fanatics. There's people, and I'm sure, there may be plenty of you who don't believe in abortion, right? You may believe it's against your religion to have an abortion, which is your right. But you have fanatics within that community that, they used to blow up the abortion clinics. Would you go that far? Just because you don't believe in it, would you go and blow up abortion clinics? No, you wouldn't, but fanatics have. You're always going to have fanatics no matter what you do. But the core of Black Lives Matter, it's a movement to bring awareness. And by saying Black Lives Matter, no one is saying you don't matter. No one's saying all lives. Of course, all lives matter to somebody. Black Lives Matter is not saying your life matters any less. If you have a child that has, let's say, lupus, and someone else has a child that has leukemia, but you're raising awareness for lupus, and this other person says, well, all cancer matters. Why is it just lupus? All cancer matters. My kid has leukemia. You don't think that matters? Well, no one's saying it doesn't matter. But at this juncture, we're bringing awareness to lupus. If that makes sense to you guys, it's the same thing with Black Lives Matter. No one is saying all lives don't matter. Saying all lives matter is just a way to it's a way to knock down Black Lives Matter. It's a way to discredit Black Lives Matter. You know, with the Black Panthers back in the 60s and 70s, they started programs. A lot of you may know the Black Panthers were considered um, thugs. They were considered criminals. They were considered violent, and none of that was true. But the media painted it that way. When the Black Panthers, the whole point of the Black Panthers was to bring resources to the Black community that the government did not want us to have. They started before and after school breakfast and lunch dinner programs, tutoring. They started clinics so that we could get medical care. But anytime an organization tries to bring resources and uplift the Black community, it gets criminalized. And the media makes you turn against it. So the Black Lives Matter movement is another one of those movements that is very important, but unfortunately, it's always going to get knocked down to make people like you afraid of people like me. When all it's saying is, please stop killing us. Give the same courtesy that you would give to people who look like you. You know, if you get pulled over by a police officer, let's say your car is stranded on the side of the road and a police officer pulls up behind you. He's going to approach you as a public servant. Hey, bud, you having car trouble? Anything going on over here? They'll do what they can to help you. But me, once they see I'm Black, they already got their hand on their gun. They approach me as I'm suspicious. You know, oh, you don't have anything in your pocket, do you? You got any drugs in the car? I get approached with suspicion. You get approached with the helping hand. You know?
Yep. So how can a community such as ours, which we are predominantly a white Christian community, how can we help help the cause or help the situation and overcome some of the biases and prejudices that people have out there, and just maybe they're soft prejudice, you don't realize you have them. What can we do?
You can stop denying what this country has done and continues to do to people of color. Stop denying it. Stop thinking that just because I'm able to get a job that I'm on equal ground as you, because I'm not. Acknowledge that this country actually does things to keep us down, to keep us behind. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can literally do your own research. There are programs that have been instituted by the US government to keep the Black community in a certain margin. Drugs in the community. How many presidents have to be caught on record admitting that they purposely flood the Black community with drugs? The crack epidemic in the 80s, they've admitted, George Bush Sr. admitted, Ronald Reagan admitted, President Nixon admitted, they all admitted that they purposely flood the community with drugs. Look at what they're doing in Georgia right now because of Black people coming out to vote. Now they're changing all the voting laws again because they want to suppress the Black vote. Stop denying that these acts of racism happen. It does not make you liable if you admit that what happens to us is wrong. It does not make you liable. It makes you an ally. And I think that if we can start there, just because your life is okay, the work doesn't just end there, you know? And I think that a lot of people have to not be afraid of being uncomfortable. Stop being afraid that you're going to lose friends because you have a different political view.
So I have one more question before I turn it over to David. I'll probably have a couple more, but I want to allow everybody else to chime in. So where do we go from here?
Forward. Forward, you know? Acknowledgement is everything, you know? Acknowledge and let's just move forward. Let's help each other.
Excellent. Thank you. David, I would like to turn it over to you for, I'm sure we probably have a few questions that have come through the pipeline, and we want to give Caleb some time to answer some of those.
We do. We'll see if we can get to them all or not. Caleb, we may not cover all the ground today. That's okay. But working off of your last comment there, this is probably a great segue. So one of the people on the call tonight is someone from our congregation in Cumberland that is our youth director, works with our youth, works with our young people. And you just spoke to, and I loved the language, you know, it doesn't make you liable, it makes you an ally. I wonder if you could expand that a little bit and focus your answer in on teenagers and on middle and high school students, and thinking about us as a predominantly white middle to upper class community. We've got all kinds of teenagers that are part of our faith community and part of the Cumberland community. What would be your message to them about how to not be liable, but how to be allies?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part that you said. You said what was what?
Specifically, what are some ways that young people, middle, high school students, can stem the tide of racist injustice and become allies?
I think that you can let your friends know that it's not funny. You know, certain jokes, certain things that you hear, they're not funny. You know, you don't have to laugh at everything just because your friends say it. You don't have to do the things that your friends do. Like, if you truly don't believe in certain racist jokes or, you know, racist views, you don't have to go along with what your friends say. Be that voice, you know? I'm not asking everybody to be John Brown. You know, I think John Brown deserves a holiday in this country. He's one of my American heroes, but I'm not asking everybody to be John Brown, but, you know, just keep that type of energy. You know, John Brown knew that things were not right. He knew things were wrong, and he was an ally, you know? Be an ally, you know? And your parents, if you hear your parents say something, I mean, you know, half the white kids in America talk back to the parents with no fear getting knocked out, you know? So if you hear your parents say something that's racist or off color, say something, you know? I don't like that, Dad. Mom, I don't like that. That's not okay, you know? Say something. It's little things like that, you know? Little things like that. And it will put things in perspective for people, because they say things thinking that people are going to go along with it. And if you stop it before it can spread, you've done a lot. You know, a lot of people say things even though they don't really mean it, you know, but they say it because they heard it, or they say it because they think they're fitting in. You may be actually helping somebody because they may feel like they have to say it in order to fit in. You can stop them. If you say, you know what, I don't agree with that, that may make them feel relieved and be like, I'm so glad someone else feels that way and I don't have to be like this in order to fit in, you know? It's no different than I do with my children, you know, I do it with my friends. I do it on Facebook, you know, if I see somebody saying something racist, I'll step in, you know, I don't agree with that. I'm not going to sit here and jump on this bandwagon because I have a lot of white people in my life that I love very much. And I wouldn't say that in front of them. So I'm not going to say it behind them. And I think that, you know, you can teach your kids to have that same energy, you know?
Great answer. You said earlier, you're a lot more Malcolm than you are Martin.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder, one, you know, could you unpack that a little bit for us? I imagine most of us know you're referring to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., but maybe say a little bit more about what you meant in that statement. And then this was the question that came in: is one better than the other?
One is not better than the other. It's just they had different views. I feel like in this country, Martin Luther King gets jammed down our throats. Everything is Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King. I don't dislike Martin Luther King. I think the work that he did is very important. But I feel like because of his approach, how many times did he get spit on? How many times did he get punched being peaceful? How many times did he get slapped in the face, get thrown in jail being peaceful? But no matter how much he was spit on, no matter how much he was kicked or punched, he would get up and turn the other cheek. And I feel like that is what keeps getting pushed onto us, because no matter how much, even to today, no matter how much we get kicked, no matter how much we get slapped, it's always, remember Dr. King. How come you only want me to remember Dr. King when it comes to the abuses that you put on me? How come you're not remembering Dr. King when you're abusing me? So my statement was that, see, Malcolm X, he didn't believe in starting violence. He didn't believe in any of that, but he believed in protecting himself. He believed in his right to bear. Does that sound familiar? Because it's the American way, isn't it? You know, you look all across the nation, like me being here in Florida, the gun laws are so loose here. When all of the protests was going on, you should see how these people were lined up to buy guns and ammo. But how come when you buy guns and ammo and you say, I'm going to protect my home, people stand behind that? That's your right as an American. That's your Second Amendment right. But then when you see Malcolm X, when they see a group of blacks buying guns legally, buying guns, and to protect their home, then it's, well, why do you need all the guns? You know, Malcolm was like, if you slap me, I will slap you back because I have a right to defend myself. And that's all I was saying by that statement. You know, I'm not looking for trouble. I'm not coming out here looking to strike anybody. I'm not looking to create violence, but I will not stand here and allow you to create violence against me. I will defend myself. So that's what I meant by that statement, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm just gonna kumbaya my way out of this if I'm attacked, you know? So that's what that statement meant. Is one better than the other? No, because at the end of the day, they both had the same goal in mind. You know, it's just, you know, if I go down the block and take a left and take another left, and you go down the block and take a right and another right, you're still gonna meet in the same spot. You just took two different routes.
Are both methods necessary in our world, would you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think both were necessary, because I think that Malcolm X showed the Martin Luther King showed the patience, and he showed that I'm going to try to do this peacefully. And I think he called out a lot of the hypocrisy by doing it peacefully. And with Malcolm X, I think that it showed a lot of people, well, we can't just kick him and expect him to just take it. So I think that it caused people to stand back a little bit and say, wait a second, you know, you can't just steamroll us. You know, I mean, I think Malcolm X is very necessary. When you look at things like, there's a lot of things we don't get taught in school. And one of the things is the Black Holocaust or the Oklahoma City bombings. And I don't know how many people know about that, but that was a thriving community of Blacks. They had their own banks, their own hospitals, their own schools. It was a very well-to-do neighborhood. That neighborhood was bombed, houses set on fire. You had white people going up to the houses, the police, and taking the guns of Black residents, and then letting other whites come in and steal from their homes, destroy their homes, and the Blacks weren't allowed to do anything to defend themselves. So I do think that people like Malcolm X was very important because it taught people to stand for something or you'll fall for anything.
Last summer, Caleb, there was a small group of us that read a book called America's Original Sin, and it was written by a white man, Jim Wallace. And one of the statements in the book was that no white person can say, I'm not racist. This was him as a white person saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what you would say to that. Would you agree with that statement or disagree with it, and why?
I would disagree with that statement, but I get where he's coming from. But I don't think I would use the term racist. I think that there's no person, Black, white, or other, that isn't prejudiced. But I don't believe that everyone is racist. I think that the term racism does get thrown around unnecessarily a lot. You know, just for example, what happened with Sharon Osbourne on The Talk. Maybe I missed something, but I think that's terrible what happened to her. I don't know why she got called out for being a racist when she didn't say anything racist. I don't believe for 1 second that Sharon Osbourne is racist. And I think that, you know, just because she defended Piers Morgan, that's her friend, and all she said was, I don't know what he said that was racist. But she got made out to be a racist. I think people just threw that term around too loosely. I don't believe everybody's racist. I think that the way that we're brought up, the things that we see on television, the things we hear other people say, the things we read, I think that it creates a prejudice. It makes us have preconceived notions of others, you know? So yeah, I think everyone is prejudiced, but I don't think everyone, and by everyone, I don't mean white, I mean everyone, Black, white, or other. I think we all are prejudiced, but I don't think that all white people are racist.
This question just came in from Lynn Vaudry. She asks, do you think we'll get to a time when we're not Black or white, but when we call ourselves simply American?
I don't think we will ever get to that time. I think that within communities, within groups, I think we can get to a place where we can love and accept each other. But as long as we have social media, as long as we have television, as long as we have outside influences, it's always going to be Black and white. It's always going to be Black and white.
Can you pick that apart a little bit more, Caleb? I wonder if what I hear you saying is that if we didn't have social media, if we didn't have outside influences, then maybe Lynn's question could be answered differently. Is that what you're
Well,
saying? That
because
media and somewhat is what's to blame for that?
I do. I really do. I think because as people, we're all programmed. And I think that a lot of people they like to think that they can't be programmed, you know? And television programs us all, and I think you and I had this conversation, and I was telling you there's little things that show the programming of people, and you think you're in control. If you and I were standing at an elevator, let's say a group of us were standing at an elevator, and you push the elevator button. Let's say I walk over and I push the elevator button like 3-4 times. What do you think the next person's gonna do? It's gonna cause them to push that elevator button. That's programming. People, and something as simple as that, you may listen to that and say, I'm not programmed, I'm just impatient. But no, you received a social cue. Like, think of it this way. If I sat here and started going, and I kept clearing my throat, how long do you think I can do that before someone in this group gets the feeling that they need to clear their throat? We are programmed as a society, and television does it, and they do it purposely. So I think without social media, without television, you don't have those influences. You can't create a narrative and then force it on you. If I open my social media page and I open Annie's social media page, I'll see things on my page that she'll never see.
Mm-hmm.
I may see things on her page that I'll never see come up on my timeline, you know? But it's designed that way. It's all algorithm. And social media, there was a great documentary on Netflix about the social media and how it's used to program people. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely think that without it, I mean, people are people, and we're always going to have our thoughts and opinions. But I definitely think that the media turn us against each other.
And David, I do have a question, or just my question.
Go ahead, Steve.
My question to Caleb is, what would you ask us?
Okay. What would I ask you as far as what?
This conversation.
There's not really anything I would ask, except I would ask of. And it was like when David and I spoke, I would just say you have to have these conversations with people who don't look like you. But when you have these conversations, you have to be very honest. You have to say what your fears are, say what your misconceptions are, say what your thoughts are, any prejudice thought you may have or feeling, speak about it, because that's the only way that anyone can change your mind, period. If I don't know what you're thinking, I can't help ease your mind. I have no problem, and Rosina knows this, because Rosina and I, we've worked together so many times, and I'll say to her, how come white people this, or how come white, and we have fun with it, but I'm not afraid to ask those questions. If you think something and you truly want to know, don't go to the media for the answer. Don't go to the person who looks like you for the answer. If you have friends of other races, talk to your friends. How can we help break these stereotypes? I'm not a lazy Black man. Black people didn't start being considered lazy until slavery was over and you had to pay them for the work they did. Then all of a sudden, that's when it came in that Black people were lazy, because we didn't want to work for free. I'm not lazy. I wish I was lazy. I'm tired of getting up at 4 a.m. to go to work. I wish I had it in me to just lay in bed and say, forget it. All Black people are not on welfare. Check the statistics. There's always been more white people on welfare than black people, but we're made the face of welfare. We work hard. We have faith. We have family structure. There are plenty of broken homes that belong to white people. Plenty. There are plenty single white mothers. If you turn on the Disney Channel now, probably 5 out of 10 shows that you watch, you're going to see a single white woman with children. You know, but they'll never talk about that. They'll still talk about the broken homes, you know, within the black community. My grandparents were together to the day my grandfather died. My grandmother she's never married again. I grew up knowing both my parents.
Get to know each other.
Huh?
Get to know each other.
Yes, and that's what I have to say about that. Like, just please stop believing everything that you hear about people. Get to know your neighbor if you really want to know them, and shut down the people around you who have such negative things to say. Don't entertain it. Don't entertain it, you know? And that's what I would have to say.
That's probably a good place for us to end, but I'm going to put one last question into play, and it is kind of a big question, but it feels like a necessary one. And with just a few minutes left, Caleb, I'm going to put it to you. And the question is this just came in. What is black and what is white?
Pigment. Black and white is pigment. We are the same. We are the same species. The difference in our skin color has to do with the difference in regions in the world. I have darker skin because originally I come from a hotter climate. So my skin protects me from the sun. I have a larger nose because of that warm and humid climate. I need to take in more air. Your skin is more pale because of the region of the world you come from. It's cold, it's further away from the sun. That's why you step in the sun and you burn up. Your skin was not made to be that close to the sun. And that's why the closer you get to the sun, the darker the people get. That is it. We have the same mental capacity. We are the same. I cannot sleep with an ape and have a baby with an ape. I cannot lay down with a dog and have a baby with a dog, but I can lay down with a white female and have a baby. We are the same species. That's what white and black is. It is pigment.
Caleb, we are grateful for your presence here with us tonight and for your
David,
story.
I don't mean to cut you off, but can I just say something?
Yeah.
Miss Lynn, you have a beautiful smile. She's been sitting here just listening, and she's popped up a smile, and she's made it very, very comfortable for me to speak freely because I can tell she's really listening, but I definitely feel welcome.
Well, we feel welcomed by you tonight, and we're grateful for your story, for your time, and most of all for your humanity. And our congratulations to your son on his graduation.
Absolutely.
And,
I'll let him know.
This, my friends, brings us to the end of our forum. We're going to take a break, but our work is not over. In every way, it has just begun. And let me just say as we close out that those of you who have been on these calls with us over the last 3 months, we will be holding another call in the near future where we will invite you to come out and to have a discussion about what we, as a community located in Cumberland, as a community that has a faith, what it is that we are going to do with this opportunity that we have had over these last many months. So stay tuned for another invitation to get on Zoom with us coming up. Our thanks to Steve Hill, who has moderated every session, and our thanks one last time to Caleb Johnson for being with us tonight. It was our grace and our gift to be with you, Caleb. And we wish you all the best and hope that our paths will cross again very soon, up here or
Absolutely.
down there.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for talking.
Good
Appreciate it.
night
Thank you.
and be well, my friends.
All right.
Bye now.